Hello, I hope you're doing well today. My name is Ian Green, and I'm the musician for Music Dreams and also for Ian J. Green. And it's my pleasure here today to work with you on a very interesting piece that is a part of the Level 8 material through the Royal Conservatory of Music, the 2022 edition of the Syllabus. But it also can be found in a series of pieces by Robert Schumann, called Album for the Young. Now, my German pronunciation is not great, but I think it says Knecht Ruprecht. But again, apologies if I totally messed that up. But basically, it's a very fun, energetic piece that can be found on pages 52 and 53 of the repertoire book, and also as a part of the album for the young. Now, this piece is an interesting has an interesting structure, and today's video will outline the structure of the piece and also speak about some of the themes in the music. So then, when you're studying the music and learning the piece, you can also understand not only just the notes, but also how Mr. Schumann wrote the music. So let's go over to a shared screen, which is basically a scan of the purchased book, just for the purpose of this tutorial. So then we can literally be on the same page together. Now, the piece is written in the scale of A minor, so that is the original key signature of the first section. And we could call this piece something called ternary form. There are a few different views on this, but I would suggest that we have a main section for the first page, essentially all the way from bars 1 to 24. But then there is an interesting change of mood on page 2. So we could have a larger section B where we go into the key of F major, which is kind of an interesting key choice because it's not quite related to A minor, but it's close enough, being from 0 sharps and flats in A minor or C major, going to 1 sharp or flat, one flat in this case going to the key of F major. Now there's also an interesting change of key partially in the middle of this section, but we'll get there a little later. Now when we get to page 3, there is then basically a repeat or a recurring section A. So we go back to the key of A minor, and then we have basically an exact replica or a return of the first page on the third page. And that brings us right to the end of the piece. Now, something that's interesting within this form is that we could also call each of the phrases by a structural name. So we could say that the first phrase is section A, and then we have a return of section A where the main theme is played twice. But the only thing that's different is that even though we go 5 to 1 or E major going to A minor, at the end of each of these two phrases, the only note that's different is that in the melody, we go to a C as part of the A minor chord in bar 4, and then we go to an A in bar 8. Now we can call this next section B, where this phrase and this phrase, bars 9 to 16, are something different. And then we could say that this is then section A, all the way from bar 17 to 24. Now, some artists choose to call section A the first phrase, the first 8 bars. But I wanted to show that it's actually interesting how the structure of this piece works, because the first line is basically written twice, but the only thing that's different is that the last note is instead of a C, it goes to an A. So it's kind of interesting poetry that Mr. Schumann wrote. But traditionally, I would also say that phrase A is bars 1 to 8, phrase B is bars 9 to 16, and then we have a return of A1, because it's not exactly the same, but there's a lot of music that's similar from bars 17 to 24. Now in section B, the big section of page 2, there is actually another set of musical ideas. We can call this first section, section A, from bars 25 to 32, and then we have something called section B with a very interesting change of key here. And then we get back to section A again, or phrase A, from bars 41 to the end. Now, the definition of A versus B, you might be wondering, and that means that A, the first phrase or section of a piece, is organized with musical ideas, but then when we have B, that means that the music is very different from the first part. So in this case, in the section B, page 2, the melody goes like this. And then you could repeat that, or you can go on to section B. And then the melody's in the left hand. And then something that's really ingenious is that for bars 37 and 38 and 39, Mr. Schumann switches to the key of D flat major, where we have lots of flats, 5 flats in that scale. So there's a really interesting change of color. And then we go back to the scale of F major by the time we play bar 41 to the end of that page. And there's an interesting authentic cadence that occurs at the end, 5, 7 to 1 in the key of F, right in that last line. You can really hear that 5 to 1 there to finish that key. Then Mr. Schumann has essentially the same music that occurs in page 1, where we have the 2 different themes, A, B, A, and the same form is repeated. So that's where we can call this ternary form, because we have 3 main pieces within one piece. But they all work together, especially because the first section is repeated at the end. So when learning the piece, it's really helpful to know what the structure is. So when you're learning the different musical ideas, you can see how they interchange, where there is music that's the same, and also how to understand what is different within the different parts. The tune itself of section A is very brooding and kind of dramatic. Etc., etc. When we get to section B, it's very light and almost happy. It's very interesting how Mr. Schumann wrote this piece. So I do hope that this structural analysis and description helps, so then when you're learning the piece, you can see how the music is written and what Mr. Schumann has done to create beautiful music and also create an interesting structure within the piece. Again, apologies for the pronunciation of the German title, but I do hope that you enjoy the music and have a fun time as you practice this really interesting piece. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day and take care.